this study up here to kind of help simplify or to actually create more confusion about what is the best fast for MS. And what they did here was they, compared daily calorie restriction with intermittent calorie restriction with time restricted feeding. So they're kind of throwing everything together and seeing what sticks. And what they found was, well, first of all of the different groups that they created with all the different fasts, they were all safe. There were no complications. I think one person reported a migraine, but they already had migraines. People who did calorie restriction actually weren't able to stick with the program as much. Calorie restriction is actually more challenging than to just shifting the eating window like you do with time restricted eating or that overnight fast. And their other conclusion was time restricted eating was probably an easier place to start, and that we need more data. And what they also concluded was nutrition research is hard. You can take the most dedicated people, myself included, if I was in a research study, and if I had to comply with a study like this, I don't know if I could do it more than a few days. It is really hard. I do know a few people who do, participate in research studies and can go for a year or 2 years, but that's unusual. And so data on fasting and nutrition is really hard to come by. Okay. So what is the best fast for MS? Well, first of all, it's the fast that you're willing to do. Okay. To me, as a physician working with patients, it doesn't matter where they start as long as they're being safe and they're excited about what they're doing. The data is sparse. There's no firm conclusions. Like, I can't tell you if you do this fasting regimen, you are going to remyelinate. We know some mice remyelinated, but I don't know how that translates to humans. And data doesn't always reflect the real world, right? We can go and look at data on all kinds of things, but when it actually comes to people putting things into practice, sometimes these things don't quite line up together. And so even though the data is really important, safety is important, it helps us figure out how to not spin our wheels and waste time on things that don't work. I think it's also important to kind of step back and look at the big picture. The point of fasting is to give the GI tract empty periods so that it can heal itself. So however you choose to do that is probably going to be helpful to you. We're not at the place where we can like put a magnifying glass on you and say, oh yeah, you remyelinated and your cytokines are improved. Like, that just doesn't happen in clinical practice. Think about what works for your lifestyle. Do you have a job where you are away from being around, your kitchen, where you can eat, in a 16-8 regimen where you're eating from, like, let's say 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Maybe that doesn't work for you. Maybe you'd rather fast on the weekends, right? So you got to think about what works for you. What are you willing to do? And, some people actually don't want to fast, and that's okay too. Fasting is just one tool among many tools. And so, if it doesn't work for you, that's fine. I do have people who try it and they go, I feel terrible. Well, then fasting is not for you. Or maybe you need to work on your diet and eat more whole foods that are going to really nourish you and stabilize blood sugar before you can feel good on a fasting regimen. So what are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? If really trying to clean up your cellular health is important to you, then this is something that can actually be really profound. And I highly recommend that you stick to it and create a regimen. Maybe do it with a friend, get into a program that can help you do it, talk to your doctor, think about your goals, and is fasting in line with the goals that you want to achieve. So here are my best tips on when to eat. So this is more than just fasting, but looking at a lot of people, having self-experimented on myself, and looking into traditional Chinese medicine and what Ayurvedic medicine has to say, here are some things that you can start doing today to help improve your gut health, to help strengthen your cellular health, lower inflammation. This is something I learned from the pandemic. I was making 3 meals from scratch every day for my family, and it was exhausting. And my neighbor said she only feeds her family twice a day. And I thought, well, is that allowed? Yes, it's allowed. And this is actually something we've adopted. We only eat 2 solid meals a day. And this can change sometimes, whether it's a school day or a weekend, but generally, eating 2 to 3 solid meals a day without a lot of snacking is the way to go. When you eat, don't eat until you're 110% full. Eat until you're about 3/4 full, and then sit back and just be mindful and tune into your body. Can you just stop eating, maybe walk away for 10 minutes, and then you can have more food if you want to. Within a few weeks, you can actually get to this point where you're not overloading your GI tract. Okay, so eat until you're about 75% full. What happens is within about 20 minutes, your brain and your gut catch up and you go, oh, I'm not actually hungry. So, and then you won't want to eat that extra amount that you would have would have been your second helping. Avoid snacking. Every time you eat, you're turning on the GI tract. And as you're digesting food, if there's carbs in there, you're turning on insulin and cortisol, and you're turning on the hormone system. You're, having to put out digestive enzymes. And so if we're snacking, we're constantly engaging the GI tract with digestion and absorption. And if we can just cut out the snacking or keep it to a minimum because we're eating 2 to 3 solid meals, then the GI tract can just get in, do digestion and absorption, and get out, right? So think about this. If you're a big snacker, maybe you cut out snacking. This could be a wonderful place to start before you embark on fasting. We did talk about stopping eating 3 hours before bed so the upper GI tract can empty. And if you can go to bed feeling even a little bit hungry, that might actually be a good sign that the upper GI tract has now moved on, it's open, and you're ready to go to sleep and have repair happen. If you're a diabetic, have unstable blood sugars, be careful with this because your medications have probably been titrated to how you normally eat. So you'll need to talk to your doctor about how to adjust medications if all of a sudden you're moving all these eating windows or cutting down calories. Delay breakfast by a bit. So maybe you don't eat the first thing, when you wake up. You might start noticing that if you delay breakfast, you're actually not that hungry until you start eating, and then your GI tract turns on, and then you start thinking about food more. So, maybe start delaying breakfast by an hour and see how that goes. Again, you're listening to your body. How do you feel? Does it feel good, or do you feel low energy? And as a good starting point, I would just aim for that time restricted eating overnight. Start with 10 to 12 hours. You may want to increase that over time. If you're already doing 12 hours, go to 13 or 14. I think most people do pretty well around 15 or 16 hours. That I know that is certainly true for myself. I try to get to 16, oftentimes at 14 or 15 hours. I'm hungry. I feel like I need to eat, and then I just break my fast and eat. It's not about hitting that magic number. Even at 14, 12 hours, you're doing autophagy. You're sending good signals to your immune system and your DNA and your nervous system. All right, so remember, I showed you this slide at the beginning. How does fasting help MS? It helps lower autoimmunity and inflammation. We put healthier cells into the body. We're protecting ourselves by turning on antioxidant genes. Blood sugar improves. But here, from my own personal and clinical experience, I can tell you that weight loss is a part of it. Mood improves, so anxiety and depression. In fact, I showed you that one study that had those MS patients scored better on depression scales. So mood can improve, your energy can improve. And if you're dealing with fatigue, I think being careful about not cutting down calories at first, but just shifting that eating window, that time restricted eating, overnight eating, can be really helpful in boosting your energy. So try it. You might notice something positive in a few weeks, 1 to 2 weeks even. GI symptoms will improve. Why? because you are allowing that repair process to happen. So if you, and gut health is so important for MS health, for immune health. In fact, in Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, we say gut health is the foundation of good health. It's also the root of poor health. If your gut health isn't great, it's going to impact every other system in the body. And so because gut health is so important, we actually have a gut health program at Truemedicine to just get people to start improving how the GI tract is functioning. You are going to have greater control over your appetite. You may stop being hungry all the time and seeking food all the time. And what's wonderful about this is that you become more mindful about eating. Your relationship to food changes, and you actually will feel more in control of your body, of your health, of your MS care. So this is actually really important because we as patients sometimes have a lot of things done to us by doctors. We give us medications and go do labs and go do your MRI. And it feels like we sometimes don't have a say in the matter. But when we start fasting and feeling good, we have now done something really positive for our health. And that feels good. We feel more in control. So here's a picture I like to show when it comes to autoimmunity. Autoimmunity is a spectrum. It's not at all or nothing, where either you have no autoimmunity or you're in full-blown autoimmunity. And think of it as gradations. You could have a very well-regulated immune system where you're not inflamed and your immune system's ticking along great, or you could be more dysregulated when the immune system has forgotten the rules and it's attacking its own tissues and inflammation is on without knowing when to turn off. And so you may already be aware that you can move back and forth on this continuum, because when you have a relapse, you might be more on the orange side. And when your relapse improves, you move more towards the cooler side. And so healthier lifestyle habits like good sleep, good anti-inflammatory foods, plant-based foods, exercise, stress management move you to the blue side. And conversely, poor lifestyle habits move you to the dysregulated, inflamed side. So we actually do have some control on where we are on this continuum, and we can move back and forth based on our daily behaviors, right? So, what decisions we make about the foods we eat, when we go to sleep, how we manage our stress, etc.